had been married for nearly 30 years. They had built a life together filled with memories, raising 2 children, working hard in their respective careers, and supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. Now, in their early 50s, they found themselves at a crossroads. The children had moved out, their careers were winding down, and the house that once felt full of laughter now felt strangely quiet. One evening, Mark sat on the porch, sipping a cup of tea as the autumn leaves danced in the wind. Linda was inside, scrolling through her phone, lost in her own world. This silence had become their new normal. It wasn't an angry silence, nor was it uncomfortable. It was just there. Do you remember when the kids were little? Mark finally spoke, breaking the silence. Linda looked up. Of course. It feels like yesterday, doesn't it? He nodded. And now, it's just us. Linda gave a small smile, but said nothing. She, too, had been feeling the weight of the quiet. It wasn't that she didn't love Mark. She did, deeply. But something had shifted. Their conversations had become transactional. Did you pay the bills? What's for dinner? What time is your doctor's appointment? Gone were the days of deep, meaningful talks and spontaneous laughter. One Sunday afternoon, Linda found an old photo album tucked away in the bookshelf. She flipped through the pages, smiling at the young couple staring back at her. Them from decades ago on their honeymoon in Italy, laughing at a cafe in Rome. She had almost forgotten what that version of them felt like. That evening, she placed the album on the dinner table. "Look what I found," she said as Mark sat down. He picked up the album, flipping through the pages. Wow, we were so young and so in love, Linda added softly. Mark glanced at her. We still are. She smiled, but deep down she wondered. Were they? Or had they simply grown used to each other? The following weeks were filled with the same routine. Mark went to work at his small consulting firm. Linda kept herself busy volunteering at a local shelter. They lived together, but in many ways they were living separate lives. One evening, as they sat in the living room watching TV, Mark noticed Linda had been quieter than usual. "Something on your mind?" he asked. She hesitated before speaking. "Mark, do you ever feel like we're just coexisting?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "I love you, but sometimes it feels like we're just going through the motions. We don't talk like we used to. We don't do things together anymore." Mark set down the remote. He had felt it too, but he had brushed it aside, assuming it was just part of getting older. "I don't want us to feel that way, Linda. What can we do?" Linda thought for a moment. "Remember how we used to take road trips, just the 2 of us, with no plans, no schedules?" Mark smiled. "Yeah, those were great." "Let's do that again," she said, a flicker of excitement in her eyes. The following weekend, they packed a small bag, got in the car, and just drove. They had no destination in mind, only a desire to rediscover each other. They talked about everything: childhood memories, dreams they had forgotten, things they wanted to do in the years ahead. As they sat by a small lake that evening, watching the sun set, Linda leaned her head on Mark's shoulder. "This feels nice," she whispered. Mark kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, it does." Over the next few months, they made an effort to reconnect in small but meaningful ways. Mark started leaving little notes for Linda in the mornings, like he used to when they were younger. Linda surprised Mark with a home-cooked dinner of his favorite meal. They started taking evening walks together, holding hands like they hadn't in years. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about remembering why they had fallen in love in the first place. One evening, as they danced slowly in the living room to an old love song, Linda looked into Mark's eyes and saw the same man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I think we're going to be okay," she said softly. Mark smiled. "I know we will. Because love wasn't just about the beginning. It was about choosing each other every single day, even when the years had changed them. And that was exactly what they intended to do. As the years progressed, Mark and Linda faced the reality of aging. Mark began experiencing occasional joint pain, making it harder for him to enjoy their long walks. Linda, once full of energy, found herself feeling more fatigued than usual. One evening after a particularly rough day, Mark sighed, rubbing his knee as he sat down. Linda noticed and frowned. "Have you seen a doctor about that?" He waved her off. "It's just part of getting older." She reached out and placed a hand on his. "We're getting older together, Mark. We need to take care of ourselves. For each other." That conversation led them to make some important changes. They started prioritizing their health, exercising together, eating better, and making time for doctor's visits. They realized that aging wasn't just about accepting limitations. It was about adapting so they could enjoy their years ahead. With retirement approaching, they both started feeling restless. Their careers had been a big part of their identities, and now, with more free time, they weren't sure what to do next. One evening, over dinner, Linda said, "I don't want to just sit at home all day. I feel like we still have so much to give." Mark nodded thoughtfully. "What if we started something together? Maybe volunteer work?" Linda's eyes lit up. "What about mentoring young couples? We've been through so much. We could share what we've learned." And so they began. They started leading small group discussions at their community center, talking about love, challenges, and longevity in marriage. They even started writing a small blog together, sharing their experiences. It gave them a renewed sense of purpose, something they could build together in this new phase of life. With their newfound appreciation for each other, Mark and Linda embraced the beauty of simplicity. They started enjoying quiet mornings together, sipping coffee on the porch, reading side by side, and laughing at old stories. One evening, during a power outage, they lit some candles and played a board game they hadn't touched in years. As they laughed over Mark's terrible luck in the game, Linda realized something. "Happiness isn't about the big moments, is it?" she mused. Mark shook his head. "No, it's about this. Just being together." And they made a promise to never take those little moments for granted again. Years passed, and though their hair turned gray and their steps slowed, their love only deepened. They had learned that marriage wasn't just about passion or excitement. It was about commitment, patience, and choosing to love each other every day. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Mark took Linda's hand. "Do you regret anything?" he asked softly. Linda smiled. "Only that I didn't love you even more." Mark chuckled, squeezing her hand. "Then I guess we still have time to fix that." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat in peaceful silence, knowing that through all the seasons of life, they had chosen each other, and they always would.